The Bengals have addressed multiple weaknesses this week in free agency, adding Geno Stone and Zack Moss. Thoughts on them, plus a farewell to Joe Mixon, and much, much more right now on Enter the Jungle. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapien. I will be joined by Andrew Fox Miller coming up in just a bit. Welcome into Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Thank you so much for watching every single Tuesday at 8 Eastern right here on CBT, weekly on the Big Play Network. And we're so excited to be on Bally Sports every single week as well and a part of the Big Play Network. And let's get into what's been a busy, busy week for the Bengals already. And the fact that they've added two key pieces, two key areas that they wanted to address with Geno Stone, with Zack Moss coming into this free agency period. Something that I hit on and I talked about it when it came to just different needs is going back to the past to look at what the Bengals plan could be. And before the 2021 season, they went after Chidobe Awuzie. They went after Mike Hilton. They went after the year prior, Von Bell. These mid-tier free agents that were coming out of their rookie contracts that appeared to be on the upswing, and they got it right with all of them. And that helped them get to Super Bowl 56. That helped them make it to back-to-back AFC championship games and win back-to-back AFC North championships. And so when I look at Geno Stone, almost 25 years old, Zack Moss, he's 26 years old, will be 27 in December. I think both of these guys fit that bill. They fit the bill of the experienced rookie contract guys that are ascending, that have their best football ahead of them. And something when the Bengals agreed to terms with both of these players on Monday that I looked at, I was like, these clearly seem like priorities for the Bengals. The Bengals prioritized Geno Stone, even though it's 2 years, $14 million. They prioritized him. They didn't go after the Justin Simmonses of the world or some of these other safeties that they could have went after. They said, that guy fits us. He's the age we want. He's the profile we want, and he's going to help Lou Anarumo's defense right now. Let's go get him. Same thing with Zack Moss. I think they looked at him and they said, he is the explosive runner that we want. He's a pass blocker that we're looking for. Let's go get him. He only has 484 career carries. Let's go get these two guys. And they got it done. Zack Moss had an offer from the Cowboys. The Browns were interested. I think the Colts were open to a potential reunion. There were multiple teams interested in Zack Moss. Geno Stone, I think there were teams in on him too, including his former defensive coordinator in Baltimore, Mike McDonald, who's now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. And so when you find targets like this, they might be under the radar guys. You might not have heard of Geno Stone before this week. You might not have heard of Zack Moss before this week. But you know what? The Bengals pegged them as ideal fits. And so for them to do that, make it known, and then land the guys they were looking for on day one of the legal tampering period, that is a huge win. Let's get to a little bit more about each guy, starting with Geno Stone. Geno Stone, the thing that stands out to me about him is the fact that he had the interception against Joe Burrow in week 2 last year at Paycor Stadium. The Bengals are trying to rally, and this was the game where Burrow retweaked his calf, if you remember. And Kevin Durant's there, and so is Devin Booker. So 2 Phoenix Suns stars are there to watch the Joe Burrow and their friend, and I think it's fair to say friend, take on the Baltimore Ravens, and it didn't go well. And the reason it didn't go well for Joe and the Bengals, obviously he tweaked his calf at the end, but it's because Geno Stone baited Burrow to throwing over the middle to T. Higgins. And boom, interception in the red zone, in the end zone. And that was the difference in the game. It was a 1-score game, 1-score difference. And that kind of derailed the Bengals' momentum in the second half. They did rally, but it wasn't enough, and they lose. That can be the difference. And I think that play is a big reason why the Bengals looked and said, man, Geno Stone is really, really smart. And you look at the rest of his film, well, he had 7 interceptions. And over the past 2 years, he's played in every single Ravens regular season game, all 34 regular season games. So he's been durable. He's got the football smarts. He's ascending. And it's a reasonable contract at 2 years, $14 million, can get up to $15 million with incentives. Let's do a little bit on Zack Moss now because he's 26 years old. We'll be at 27 in December, like I said. 2 years, $8 million. Makes a ton of sense because the Bengals wanted to get more explosive. Okay, well, he has 11 runs of 20 yards or more last season. Makes sense to me. And he was part of a committee and by the end of the year in a reserve role behind Jonathan Taylor. And I think he's the type of back that will complement whoever else you bring in alongside Chase Brown, whether it's Chase Brown and Zack Moss. Maybe Brown gets nicked up for a week or two and Zack Moss needs to carry the load. He's shown he can do that. He's shown that he can be a high quality pass blocker as well. And at 2 years, 8 million, you don't feel the need to make him your feature back if the right running back is there in the draft. So the Bengals get two ascending players, two players I think that will play a lot, one of which will be part of a running back by committee with Zack Moss and Chase Brown and whoever else they add to that running back room. Travion Williams, obviously, they re-signed. And then Geno Stone, I think he makes a ton of sense for this secondary. What does it mean for Dax Hill? What does it mean for Jordan Battle? We will get to that coming up in a bit. But up next, right after the addition of Zack Moss, the Bengals, well, they moved on from Joe Mixon. Let's welcome in Andrew Fox Miller coming up next, and let's discuss Joe Mixon's time in Cincinnati. That's next right here on Enter the Jungle. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. He's Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapien, and let's get into Joe Mixon because it's something we've discussed a lot on this show, his future, and the Bengals obviously moving on from him, clearing over $6 million in cap space. He had a nearly $9 million cap hit. And so part of this is simple. Zack Moss, Travion Williams, and Chase Brown together won't have the cap hit that Joe Mixon was going to carry this season. And at the same time, I looked back at Joe Mixon's career, 7 years, over 6,000 rushing yards, 4 1,000-yard seasons. There's a lot to like. And so I get the sadness that some of the Bengals fans certainly had on Monday when they made this move.
Yeah, and I think that's totally warranted. It's okay to mourn, but at the same time recognize that, hey, the Bengals have a vision. They have an idea of what they want to achieve. And unfortunately, Joe Mixon and perhaps most importantly, his salary cap just wasn't working for them the way that they want it. And you have to trust that vision. It's all we can do at this point.
I agree. And I could get into this a ton. I don't think they did it well last year in free agency. I think they kind of stumbled into Orlando Brown Jr., but it's not like they had a bunch of day one free agent targets that they landed. They had re-signed Jermaine Pratt, but they had lost multiple guys. And the losing guys, we knew that was coming, but this year feels different because they are hitting their targets. They clearly identified those two guys and landed them. And when I think about Joe Mixon, I think about early Joe. And when he was first drafted, obviously there was a ton of discussion about him. The Bengals loved him as a prospect. I mean, they loved him. They thought he was as good as any running back in that 2017 draft. And obviously that 2017 draft is loaded. You're talking Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, obviously Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, I think was in that draft class as well. Austin Eckler might've been as well late, but Joe Mixon, a big part of that. I remember the first time meeting Joe in the locker room and just kind of talking with him. And he was shy with the media then. I don't think he wanted to talk a ton. And instantly I was like, oh, he's going to be a star. He's wearing 28 too. I instantly thought back to Corey Dillon. I instantly thought back to, oh my good, like he's going to be a superstar because they had a first round grade on him. And there was obvious reasons why he fell in the draft to round 2, but they loved him. And I think looking at his career, if 2018 Joe Mixon could morph into 2024 and be drafted now by the Bengals with the 49th pick instead of the 48th pick, right, this year, I do wonder how his career changes. And it was really good, right? Over 6,000 yards for the Bengals, 49 rushing touchdowns, had nearly 300 receptions, like really productive career, one of the most productive running backs in Bengals history. So it was really good. But everyone remembers those, especially those early offensive lines where we're talking Bobby Hart and we're not talking about Joe Burrow. We're talking about Andy Dalton at quarterback and AJ Green entering the next phase of his career and injured. And so it was tough early on. And that's when Joe was at his best. His second year, he averaged 4.9 yards a carry. He was an explosive running back. He was dynamic. And it's a shame because I think young Joe Mixon in this offense now, and I get it. People are going to say, oh, he's still awesome. That's fine. But young Joe Mixon in this offense now would have been a lot of fun. And it's a shame we didn't get to see Burrow's prime with Mixon's prime outside of 2021. I think those two kind of aligned for that one season.
Yeah, and you could talk about early Joe Mixon. I agree with you. Those are probably the best memories I have as well. But let's go a bit more. Let's do a little bit of recency talking about Joe Burrow era. It'll always stand out in my mind the fact that trick play, Mixon throws it to T. Higgins in the end zone. We're in the Super Bowl. That's actually happening. And just the mind-blowing moment of seeing even that happen. And I know it's not Mixon tearing it up and running it right into the end zone. But you talk about Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon, unfortunately, can't share that type of a memory. Joe Mixon went to a Super Bowl with this team, and that is massive. Any fan base could recognize that. One other thing I was going to say about memories, and you talk about meeting Joe Mixon. I also, having met Joe Mixon, I can tell you that going to his pro camp, going to his football camp for kids, watching him interact with the kids, they talk about how nice of a person Joe Mixon is, how great he is with the youth. I witnessed it firsthand, and I'm telling you, it was an experience. I looked at him in a much different way going through that experience and being able to sit with Elise Jessie and have her interview him the way that she did. And I'll flash up clips of that as well as we talk about it. But that was something that personally I will always remember. It was huge for me.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And he's always the one that was throwing footballs with kids. And he'll do that. He'll continue to do that, I'm sure. His career, it obviously will continue. But to me, it's much like Tyler Boyd. It's much like Giovanni Bernard when that happened. He had a year left on his deal. And sometimes it's just time. And it felt time. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't get to appreciate what he did, how he helped this team, and what he's done for the fan base. Because I do think he's a fan favorite. I do think from a Cincinnati standpoint, he became a star. When I first met him, I thought he might even become an NFL star. I don't know if he necessarily got to that level. And that's not me hating on him. I think Joe and Jamar are the only two stars by NFL standards that are on this roster right now. And so that's a really high bar to get to. Trey Hendrickson's awesome, right? But he's just not there from a star standpoint, even though he's an awesome player and a star player, if that makes sense. So to me, that's the other element. You're right. Is how he treated the fans, how he certainly treated kids and always played catch with them before games. It certainly would high five them and sign autographs and do all of those things. And that really matters. Obviously, his camp has been a really cool thing that he's done annually as well. And all the best to him. And obviously we know that even though his Bengals tenure is done, his NFL career isn't. But up next, let's get back to the current Bengals and what the Geno Stone addition means for Dax Hill's future, for Jordan Battle's future. That's next on Enter the Jungle. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapien. He is Andrew Fox Miller. This is Cincinnati Bengals Talk every single Tuesday at 8 Eastern right here. You get Enter the Jungle. And let's discuss Dax Hill, because I think I know what's going to happen with Jordan Battle. And I think the addition of Geno Stone, it's been a mixed bag. Here's what I want to see, Andrew. I want to see Dax Hill used the way he would have been used if the Bengals never let go of Jesse Bates. You have this deep safety in Geno Stone. Have Dax Hill, move him all around, treat him like a weapon, because I still think he is a weapon. My concern is that Geno Stone is going to be this deep safety that plays all the time, and he should. That Jordan Battle is this emerging safety that they feel like needs to play in the box. And that Dax Hill's just kind of looking around like, all right, well, where am I going to play? Of the three guys, Geno Stone, Jordan Battle, and Dax Hill, Dax Hill still has the highest ceiling. And he hasn't played a lot of safety. And now I'm worried he's not going to get the playing time needed to get the most potential and reach his potential at safety. What do you think about that?
What I think is more of a question to you, in that you say all these things. When the Bengals drafted Dax Hill, first round pedigree.
Yep.
Is this what they had in mind for him? What we're going to potentially be seeing in the year 2024?
That's what's so baffling to me is I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. I get how it looked at the end of the season, but it was his first year starting. You didn't play him at all as a rookie. And so it's just it really is weird how it's gone on. And it's also interesting what Dan Hoard had to say. And we had Dan Hoard on for a free agency preview. Check out the entire interview on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. But we had him on and I asked him about Dax Hill. And he's in the building. He's the radio voice of the Bengals. He's still bullish. He still believes in the former Bengals first rounder.
I am not out on Dax Hill by any stretch of the imagination. I think his problems are fixable. I think the Bengals still believe in him. Now, they do need to add a safety, preferably an experienced one that can help the room. Probably somebody that would replace Nick Scott and probably play a little bit more than Nick did later in the season. But it seems to me that like Dax Hill has become this target that of the 11 guys on defense, he was the one that really struggled and caused all these problems. And I don't think that's the case at all.
I totally agree. And I think what he does fits Geno Stone so well. And that's not like I'm down on Jordan Battle either. I'm not. I think, and what I hope for, Andrew, is that all three guys play and play a lot. And you want Geno Stone on the back end, that's fine. It's a passing league. It makes a ton of sense. But Dax Hill is the best athlete out of those guys by far. He's got special ball skills. I think he can guard tight ends. I think he's got the speed and athleticism, the length, all of those things. And this idea that they should just move him to corner, he's not an outside corner, move him to nickel. Mike Hilton's arguably the best nickel in the league. So you can't do that. So to me, I hope Lou Anarumo is willing to deploy more 3 safety sets, more willing to play Geno and Dax together than I anticipate him being, because I think that safety room could be really darn good. A quartet of Geno Stone, Dax Hill, Jordan Battle, love all three, and my guy Tyson Anderson coming back from the ACL. He's going to be back, and I think he'll be good and ready to go and contribute. I love that quartet, and so hopefully that's their plan. I'm worried. I'm nervous. I don't want them to give up on Dax because I think he still has a ton of potential.
And solely from an investment standpoint, I know this may be a bit premature, but honestly, when it comes time to determine what are we going to do about Dax Hill and his rookie contract, hopefully you have some answers by that point, because if it was today, it'd be really tricky. So yeah, I would love to have a bigger sample size of what he's capable of, see a bit more of that ceiling, see him running, blitzing quarterbacks, making disruptive plays. I would love it. I agree with you. I want more Dax Hill. I want to see that growth. We see that trajectory starting. We saw some growing pains. Don't take a step back because we won't be able to see how he's progressing.
Exactly. And that was my concern about spending big at safety, and they didn't. They got a really good player for $7 million per year. That's great. I love it. Now maximize that first rounder, because I think the Bengals' best defense in 2024, if it's going to reach its full ceiling, its full potential, it will involve Dax Hill. Up next, the Bengals have been busy all week long. We'll react more to a busy week at Paycor Stadium. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapien. He's Andrew Fox Miller, and we're so excited to be part of the Big Play Network and airing weekly on Bally Sports. Let's dive into some of these other guys. And two that the Bengals bring back. I mentioned Travion Williams earlier in the show. I think he's certainly a reliable piece in that backfield, someone the Bengals trust. But two other guys that stand out. And let's start with tight end, because bringing back Drew Sample, 3 years, the number's reportedly $10 million. I think it's roughly $3 million per year, and then there's some incentives in there. It's kind of wild to me because Drew Sample went from, oh my God, I can't believe they used the second round pick on him, to now I think he's sort of undervalued and was a really, really big piece of what the Bengals did offensively last year, and I'm really glad he's back.
Unfairly or not, I think Drew Sample's always been sort of up against the draft expectations when he was drafted, who he was drafted over. But the reality is, if you look at what he's done up to this point, you see the value, especially after this last season, to your point. I mean, in the deal itself, what I like about it is essentially you're guaranteeing more in that first year. And if he just doesn't pan out after that 1 year, if you really need to, you could cut him, and there's not going to be much going on in terms of a hit to the salary cap. I like it overall.
Yeah, I think one, they needed tight end help. Two, he knows the system.
Yep.
Three, he's such a key blocker. You want to talk about opening up run lanes for Zack Moss, opening up run lanes and getting this explosive run game going with Chase Brown. Drew Sample's a big part of that. And he did get going a little bit in the passing game last year as well. Had the touchdown against Buffalo where he rumbles downfield with a screen and breaks a tackle and scores. I like it. So I really like that addition. Bringing back Akeem Davis-Gaither makes a ton of sense too to me. I think he's a pro's pro, just kind of under the radar. I don't really have a good relationship with him, but I like that move. 1 year, $3 million. And one more, we said farewell to Joe Mixon. Another reason why the Bengals made it to Super Bowl 56. Chidobe Awuzie. And congrats to him signing a monster 3-year, $37 million deal with $23 million guaranteed with the Titans. Well-deserved. And Cheeto, I just hope you regain your pre-injury form. That's my thought is if so, Tennessee got a steal and it's a great deal. And if not, at least you got your money, my friend, because you've been one of the league's most underpaid players during your time with the Bengals. They signed him to a 3-year, $21 million deal ahead of the 2021 season. Obviously, that paid off and was a great deal for Cincinnati.
He's recovering from an injury this past season, obviously, but what they expected out of him, what he was just paid to be, the Bengals haven't quite replaced that yet. We'll see how that goes.
For sure. Yeah, we will see. And that secondary is certainly evolving, still young, even with the addition of Geno Stone. And we will have you covered throughout free agency on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. And for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching Enter the Jungle.